So the content of the session is, I'm going to just spend 2 or 3 minutes talking about Digimap for Schools, giving you some information about the service, showing you some of our resources. And then we've based the session on one of our resources, which is Getting Started. It's for those who are new to the service, and it will take you through all of the key functions and tools and maps, everything that you need to know to feel confident with using the service. I will base the Getting Started activities primarily around Great Britain, looking at schools and different examples of activities that you can do there. And then we will look at our global maps and look at the types of things that you can cover with those. And we'll show you the new overlays, which we've just launched in the last month. So I'm going to flip over to my browser now and have a look at the service. But just to reiterate, please do keep the questions coming in. Tell us what you would like to see, and you know, I have a plan, but we can always be flexible and show you the stuff that you need to see. So for those of you that are completely new to Digimap for Schools, we're a mapping service for schools. We've got an About section here, which tells you what we provide and the kind of curricular links, for example, that are relevant for the different sectors. So for the primary web page here, you know, we break down what you can teach with Digimap for Schools over the main curricular areas, such as vocational, place knowledge, geographic skills, human and physical geography, and so on. So we clearly tell you, you know, here are the kind of things that you can cover from the curriculum with this service. We've got maps from the Ordnance Survey. The service was originally set up between Adina and the Ordnance Survey as they started to phase out their project where they give paper maps to schools. So we have really high quality Ordnance Survey maps of Great Britain. We have historical and aerial imagery as well. And in about a year or so ago, we added in some global maps. So we've got a really nice atlas style map and some detailed mapping of urban and rural areas as well across the world. So we'll show you all that. If you haven't subscribed, there's details of how to do so here, and we do offer a 30-day free trial. So all the information on how to get your free trial up and running is there. I'm going to show you the help and resources here. We have a help center where we've got these how-tos, which show you how to use all of the different features in the service. There are some quick guides which show you how to get started. And I wanted to show you our learning resources because there is a lot of content here. So yeah, so we've got different categories of learning resources here. We do really feel that the service offers, it's got real cross-curricular potential. So we've got different categories of resources, but within each one, you will find various filters. So you can select the stage that you're looking for. You might want to see, okay, what can I do literacy-wise with the service? And we've got lots and lots of different resources available. They're all authored by curricular experts who are associated with the Geographical Association. So there's a lot of high quality stuff available in there, and they are open to the web, so they're free for anyone to come along and use and get ideas from. So please have a look at those and get some ideas. So I'm going to log in now and start showing you the service. So this is the starting screen that you always see when you open Digimap for Schools. The first thing most people like to do is to try and identify either their home or their school. So to zoom in and out, you simply, to zoom in, certainly you can double click on the map or use the pinch zoom if you're using a tablet. You can also zoom in by using the scroll wheel on your mouse if you're using a mouse, which I am today, simply by scrolling towards the screen. You may have noticed that there's also this scale bar on the right hand side here. So if you click on the plus, it will zoom you in another level. If you click on the minus, it zooms you out. So the maps over Great Britain, by default, you view the Ordnance Survey maps. So you notice that as you zoom in, the map can change. What we do is we have various map views and we display an OS map that's suitable for that scale. So this one we're looking at here, this is the digital equivalent of the Explorer paper maps that you can buy from the Ordnance Survey. But I just wanted to point out that the map key is available in the sidebar menu on the left here. So this is split into different categories. So you can open any of these categories and the pupils can see all of the map symbols for that particular map. We do also make all of these map keys available on our resources site as PDFs. So if you want to download those and start using those for exercises with pupils, they're there. Similarly, if you print a map using our print tool, which I'll show you later, you can request to get a legend with the map as well. I will show you later as well, but I'll just mention it now. The Ordnance Survey have a lot of educational resources as well, and they provide both the map keys, and they have a really nice set of flashcards, which you can print and use in classes as well for all the map symbols. So let's try and find a school. Okay, so let's zoom right in and find a school. So here's a school over here. So I've just zoomed into this school, but of course there is a search box available at the top left where you can use a place name or the postcode of your school if you prefer to do that. Now, once we're here, you can see we've got this map selector. So I can switch to aerial mapping at this stage using the map selector tool. So I can just flip this to the Ordnance back to OS by clicking on that radio button, or change over to aerial by using that there. So a lot of teachers feedback that the aerial view is really so helpful for pupils just to try and get to grips between the topographic mapping and the aerial imagery to help them identify human and physical features. So if we flip back to the OS, I'm just going to show you another one of our tools on the left here, which are the measurement tools. You can measure any feature on the map at either distance or area. So it's really straightforward. So let's select area and say that we wanted to measure the size of this playing field here. So you just simply click at each point and double click to finish, and then you get an area measurement there. So bringing in a little bit of numeracy into your mapping as well. You can also measure distance. So let's say, for example, that we want to measure how far it is for a particular pupil to walk to school. They could tap at the school and then tap at each point of their route to school and double click to finish, and then they get their measurement on the map as well. So lots of useful little tools here. So the measurement tools are just one of them. I'm going to pull up a map that I have saved of the Daily Mile route to show you how you can start to use that concept of routes, but personalize it to the school. So this is a map of a Daily Mile route which someone has drawn on, and you can measure the line as well. You can see you can also add images in there too. So this map's been created with our drawing tools, which I'm going to go on to tell you about in a second. But I just wanted to say a little bit about the save maps while we're here. There is this facility in the sidebar on the left where you can save maps from one session to the next. So this is simply saving the location, any drawings you've added to the map, any overlays that you add, and it saves them all so that they're here the next time you come back. So any pupil who's using the service can save their maps in here. Now, what you can do as a teacher, you can unlock the saved maps, and that allows you to then organize things. You can add in different folders. So you can see we've got different folders for some of our different team members here, but you could have folders for different classes, for the Duke of Edinburgh, for example. So, but you do need the PIN code in order to unlock it. If you don't have the PIN code, talk to whoever purchased the service. They will have been sent that information. And if they don't have it, just get in touch with their help desk and we can do that for you. So you can see now that I've unlocked the folders. I could delete these if I wished. I can rename folders, add new folders, and so on. So just so that you know that that option is there. It's also really useful, I think, if you want to create a map ahead of time, ahead of the class, ahead of your lesson, you can do that and then ask the pupils to pull it up and they can start working on it. So there's one I wanted to show you, for example, this one here. Okay, so this is one I've created around a school, and I've used the drawing tools to add in these different images. So let's flip to our drawing tools on the left here. So in the drawing tools, you can do all sorts of things. You can add markers, and emojis. You can add shapes, polygons and predefined shapes, lines, text. You can add measurements to lines, text boxes, and you can add images. So on this one, I located this school and I've added a few images. So I got this idea from Darren, who's our trainer at the Ordnance Survey. And it's just a kind of little fun thing you could ask the kids to do, to say, okay, you know, if you take pictures of things around the school grounds, upload them onto the map, then you can ask the pupils to say, well, okay, is that where the football goals are located? Or do we need to move that image to somewhere else on the map? Is that where the lollipop lady stands? You know, so just to try and bring a bit of fun into it and help them start to recognise where those human and physical features are on the map. If you want to bring directional language into that and directions, there is also a compass at the top right of the map window. So it's small initially, so it could be missed, but you just click on it and you get a bigger one to help them start to develop and embed that locational knowledge. Okay. In terms of, we measured someone's route to school area, but there was another map I was going to show you. A class travel map, just to show you another kind of idea of the sort of group work that you might be able to do. For this map, all of these markers, that denotes where a different pupil lives, but they denote, for example, the red ones are those who walked to school, the orange ones are those who cycled, the blue are those who drove. So a point of discussion, I guess, of, you know, why does so-and-so drive in? You know, because there's this big road blocking the way and maybe it's not safe to cycle and so on. But you could also add an image. I did a very simple chart in Excel of this data. So kind of bringing in a bit of initial data gathering as well. And so I made a little chart, a very simple pie chart, which you could then add to the map as well, you know, saying what proportion of those are walking to school. So I think a nice visual tool to kind of aid those sort of discussions around active travel and impact on the environment and that kind of stuff. Another couple of examples I wanted to show you around the drawing tools is really popular for people to use this to create land use maps. So this is an example of a land use map, which I did around St Ives, and this is just created using our polygon tool. I've added my own little legend using the drawing tools as well, but you could create an image and again upload the image to add a legend there. So if I wanted to add to that, it would be just a matter of choosing the polygon, choosing a color. So let's say I want to add another area of woodland here. So once you open the shape menu and you select the tool you want, so for me it's a polygon, I then have got some styles that pop up here. So I'm going to choose green, which is what I'm using for woodlands. And then it's just really a matter of clicking once in the same way as we did when we were measuring area, clicking all the different points around that woodland there and double clicking to finish. So it's quite a popular activity is to create land use maps of urban and perhaps green spaces to get pupils to start to think about how our land is used. We have a lot of our people use as story maps. So this is an example of one here where someone's used the drawing tools to create a story map of their important places. So someone's, you know, one of the pupils has added markers, they've used the text box and emojis to try and, you know, visualize their town and all the important places to them. Now, I'm going to clear these maps and then I'm just going to show you the buffer tool. So we've got two buffer tools which are available in our drawing tools menu. So I've gone to York and I'm going to flip back to the Ordnance Survey map. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit on the river. Okay, so this is an area of York that I know floods regularly. And one use of the buffer tool is to consider the impact of flooding. So you can either add a point buffer or a line buffer. For this example, I'm going to add a line buffer, and I'm going to make it 100 meters wide. I'll make it, the green selection is fine. So what I do is I draw a line, approximately along the center of the river, and double click to finish. So what that allows you to kind of visualize and think about and discuss with pupils is, okay, this area is really prone to flooding. So, what is potentially going to be affected if the river Ouse floods in these areas? Are there businesses, are there houses, and so on? And another really useful tool that we have, which can help with this kind of activity, are our Geographic Images. So I don't know if you've heard of Geograph, but it's a crowdsourced database of images. So they aim to collect images for every grid square in the UK and Ireland, but we pull all of the images from that database into Digimap for Schools so that you can visualize them. I think they've got about 6 million images right now. So you can just type in, put an asterisk in the search box for the images, and then all of these little markers show you where there are images available. So the little camera icon, for example, is give me an image of this building in York. I can click on it to see a bigger one. And then there's lots of clusters here. So as I go in onto the river, all of the clusters open up as I'm more zoomed in. So here's an image of the river at that point. So the asterisk is great. It will show you all of the images there are in that area, but you can use keywords as well. So if I type in flooding, I get an image of flooding in this location. So the images can be a really nice, I think, add-on when you're looking at physical and human geography, either on a particular topic, or perhaps if you're just exploring a new location, they can give you a really nice visual and something to explore. So that is an example of a buffer. I also want to show you a buffer around a school as well. I'm going to show you a point buffer. So let's delete the one that's there. Let's zoom in on this school here. And point buffers can be really useful to get pupils thinking about, okay, well, for example, who lives within half a mile of school? So we could try a half-mile buffer around the school. So I select point, I put in 0.5 miles, click on the school, and then if I zoom out, the buffer zone is on the map for me. So that can be really useful for that kind of stuff. Okay, who lives within this, buffer zone, or what kind of features are within this buffer zone? What are we close to? What are we far away from? And so on. And a nice way to kind of, you could try a buffer around another school and compare the kind of features that each have. Now, the next thing, let me delete that one. The next thing I was going to show you are grid references. So there's a couple of ways, a couple of tools that can help with grid references in Digimap for Schools. So I've searched for Snowdon, and I'm going to open our overlays panel, which again is in this sidebar on the left. So we've split the overlays recently into several different categories, but at the top are the GB overlays. So if you're working on British National Grid, you can find the grid references in here. So the overlays are very, very simple. You just check the box next to it and it overlays them on the map. We do also offer, I'll turn that off and show you that we also offer postcodes as well. And both the postcodes and grid reference layers, as you zoom in and out, they can become progressively more or less detailed. So if I was to, I'm going to click the Start Again button. That always takes me back to the map of Great Britain. If I turn the overlays on at this point, it just gives me the 500 by 500 kilometre grid squares. So if you're starting out teaching grid references, it can be really useful for pupils to see, oh, okay, that's what the first part of the grid reference is. It's dictated by this 500 by 500 kilometre grid square name. So if I zoom back into Snowdon, for example, you'll see that our lines are more detailed. We've got more detailed grid reference lines here. And that is my grid square, my SH. So sometimes pupils might have to, depending on the location that they use, if they're using this for practice and identifying grid references, they may sometimes have to scroll down or move the map down a little to find the grid square. But so the grid square lines offer a really nice way for them to start practicing identification. So you could ask them, for example, you could have a few locations and say, find me a 4-figure grid reference for the summit station at Snowdon. So they can go along the hall and up the stairs and find that. And they've got their grid square name there. But within the drawing tools, there's a way for them to check what they've done. There's a little grid reference marker tool here. So if you select that and just pop it on the map, it pops a grid reference on the map for you. So that's one way for them to check the grid references that they've been practicing. There is another option within the information tool here. I haven't showed you this map information panel yet, but it gives you the name of the map from the Ordnance Survey, the map date and scale and so on. But there's a little coordinate capture tool here. So perhaps this is for slightly older ages, but you can turn on this little toggle button here and select any point on the map. So let's just go for the summit station again. And it gives you the grid reference in this area here, the British National Grid easting and northing, and the latitude and longitude. So for perhaps older pupils, that's a really useful tool as well if they're trying to gather lots of locations, grid references for different locations. So that's what we've got for grid references. By the way, that grid reference marker tool, I'll show you again in another few maps. It provides the latitude and longitude when you're outside Great Britain. So now I wanted to switch to historical maps. So let's have a look at Milton Keynes. Okay, and I will turn off the grid overlays. Okay, so I'm going to quickly zoom in on a building. Let's see, here's a hospital, for example. So if I open my map selector, which you remember we did when we were looking at the aerial mapping. So I can flip between aerial maps here and the OS, and I can also select maps from the 1950s and the 1890s. So if I select the 1890s, it tells me, sorry, no, they're not available at this level, but just zoom out a little bit. So if I zoom out a couple of times, a historical map becomes available. So I'm showing you that just to kind of illustrate that the historical maps that we have are, they're not very, very detailed maps. They're not maps where a pupil will be able to pinpoint exactly what was on the site of their house in the 1890s. They are overview maps. They were produced by the Ordnance Survey at those times at an inch to a mile scale. So they're very much an overview of the physical and human landscape at that time, but they're not hugely, hugely detailed. However, they're still very, very valuable for looking at the sort of social and economic history, the development of new towns, changes in transportation, for example, and these kind of topics. So for Milton Keynes, for example, let's switch back to the OS map and zoom out a few times because I want to get to a map where I'm kind of seeing the urban outline of Milton Keynes. So a really popular use of the historical maps is to consider, the development, the urban development that has happened in Great Britain over a century or so. So a really easy way to do that is to draw a polygon around the urban area. So I'm going to use the freehand one this time because it's a bit quicker. So obviously it's very rough, but it will give you the gist of this. So I've drawn this outline around Milton Keynes. What I can do now is if I zoom in once or twice, my map selector becomes available and I can now select my 1890s. So it's just a really simple way for pupils to visualize, okay, gosh, that's the extent of the change between then and now. If I flip over to the 1950s, you can also see that, although the urban area was larger then, it's nothing in comparison to the extent of Milton Keynes now. Okay, so the final thing to show you on that is that although I've just been saying, okay, here's an 1890s map, here's a 1950s one, you can actually fade between them. So let me close the drawing tools. I'm not drawing these polygons everywhere, and move over a little bit. So I've got in my map selector here, you can see the Ordnance Survey is selected on the left and the 1950s are on the right. If I drag this little slider bar here, what I can do, it's kind of fading between maps. So you can see a little of both maps at the same time. So gradually it goes completely to the OS map. And if I turn it back the other way, it goes completely to the Ordnance Survey, the 1950s map. So that's a useful little tool for comparisons between the different decades. Another couple of examples I was going to show you from my Save Maps, where that is really popular to use these maps to look at coastal erosion. So here's a map that I created in a location in East Yorkshire. So let's turn on the 1890s. So what I've done here is I've drawn with the drawing tools this yellow line along the high water mark marked on the 1890s map. I've then changed to the Ordnance Survey map and drawn the blue line along the high water mark at that time. I can then compare and get a rough measurement. I can draw a line and get a measurement label on that as well. So quite a really, I think, great visual of the sort of changes that have gone on then. And of course, I think with kind of physical geography, things like that, the Geographic Images can be a really useful tool, perhaps to see, well, are there any kind of images of barriers against erosion, groins and so on. And the other couple of examples I wanted to show you on the historical side, where I had a little story map. So this is one that we came up with in the first lockdown, I think, when we were trying to give pupils ideas of things to do to fill their time. So, why not talk to an older relative and try and map the places where she grew up or he grew up, and important places for them. And another really useful use of these is, for example, to think about transport. So let me try and find the map that I made of the Beverley to York rail line. So this is a rail line that was lost in the beaching cuts of the 1960s. So what I did was I found the 1950s map and I was able to trace the rail line all the way up from Beverley to York and save that. So that's, you can kind of start to talk about social issues then, and perhaps comparing somewhere like Beverley, how has it developed since the 1960s? Has it developed comparably to another location that wasn't cut off from York by the rail line being taken away? So those are our historical maps. I've got two more things to show you in Great Britain, and the first one is how to add your own data to the maps. So let me clear the drawings that are on this. And then I'll show you this little red marker here in the sidebar is the add your own data tool. Now you can add your own data to the maps. So that could be data that you've collected either on a field trip or perhaps from research online. It may sound like a bit of an ask for perhaps Key Stage 1 and 2 pupils to do that, but it can be a very simple file. The examples that I've got for you are very simple CSV files that were just created in Excel, just by using postcodes and grid references, which you could grab from the maps. In our help pages, we've got all the guidance on how to do that. But these are the formats that we accept: shapefile, KML, GPX, GeoJSON, and CSV. So I think for schools, really, the CSV file is the most popular. So I'm going to say choose file, and I've got a couple of examples here. So here's a litter pick one, and I just say open and import. And you can see that what I'm able to do is in the file I had a column for labels, so of the type of litter that was found, and a grid reference. So the pupils were able to gather their data and then visualize it. Another simple example I've got is London landmarks. So this is just, again, a little list. If I say import here, it's a little list of famous London landmarks and their postcodes. I'm sorry, that didn't zoom to that immediately, I think, because I had the other map open. So pretty simple stuff, but I think, you know, really nice first steps for Key Stage 2 pupils, for example, to start to think about data handling. And we have some resources on GIS, which one, for example, is for pupils to gather the locations of fast food outlets in their town and then visualize that. So we'll send you links to those resources as well. Now, the last thing I want to show you before we move on to the global mapping is how to print. So the print tool's on the top toolbar here. So there's various options on the left here. You can give it a title, so I could call it London, if I can spell that properly, and put my name. And then it tells me a print scale. Now I can output that as PDF or JPEG. A PDF is fine for me, and you can print A4 or A3 and portrait or landscape. So I'll go for portrait. And you can see the other options are to include the drawings that you've added. So the little data markers that I added of the locations such as Hanleys, those are classed as drawings. So if I uncheck that box, those won't be shown. You can also put national grid lines on. So if you're printing a map to go either for a walk or do some go on a field trip, you can add in your national grid lines. And I mentioned earlier that you can also add a legend as well. So if you add a legend, it will give me 2 PDF files. Now, this I think is really valuable up here, but I think some of our users miss it. So the content preview is saying, this is what it's going to look like. That's the style of map, there are your drawings. If you click on the layout preview, the shaded box here shows me that this is the area that my map's going to cover. So sometimes people might find that actually it doesn't quite cover all their drawings. So I think the layout preview is really useful because then you can start to move it around to make sure that the shaded area covers exactly what you want it to. And if it doesn't cover it, then you can consider either changing the scale by zooming in and out, or you could change the page size. So I'll just show you by changing to A3, that obviously covers a much larger area. So that is the print function. And I'm going to pause there just for a minute to let Laura discuss anything that you guys have been bringing up before we have a little look at the global maps.
Hi, yes, thank you so much, Viv. Yes, I'll be reading a few questions from the chat. I've been answering some in the chat, but I'll be reading some, sorry. Catherine is asking, how often are the maps updated? And I can see Andrea also has the same question. How up-to-date / how often updated are the OS maps?
Yeah, well, the Ordnance Survey are giving us maps regularly, probably twice a year. It depends on the map, I guess, as well. So this one that we're looking at, this is was published in June 2021. If I zoom right in on Hyde Park here, so here's another one, October 2020. So they have different publication and review schedules, I think, for different maps. And this Ordnance OS Master Map one is 2019. So I think we do have probably another update due to go in on the master map side, but we aren't receiving maps from the OS and data updates frequently. The historical maps are not updated. Those particular map series were chosen because they gave us a full coverage of Great Britain. As you can imagine, before World War II, maps were surveyed on a county basis, so we didn't have a map series that covered the whole of Great Britain necessarily. So the 1890s and 1950s were chosen for having full coverage of Great Britain, and they were, I guess, deemed to be quite significant time periods as well, you know, the end of the Victorian era and then post-World War II, the social changes that were happening then with new industry and so on.
Cool.
I hope that's helpful.
Thank you so much, Viv. We've got a few more questions. John's asking, how do you undo a mistake when annotating maps?
Well, there's no undo tool, Janice, but let's just say, okay, I think, oh, I didn't want to do that. We do have delete options here. So as you scroll down the drawing tools, you can either delete all, or I really like this delete features on click. So if it has to be orange to be activated, and then I can just do that. That's the best I've got on that, I'm afraid. I think at one time we did have yeah, that is working actually. Okay, so here's another little tip. So let's say you're drawing a line. So you're going around your building and you think, oh, I've gone wrong. If you hit Control Z, it should take you back to the point. Oh, it's not, I'm sorry. Okay, apologies, I'll look into that. I think that's a little bug, but I will confirm whether the Control Z should take you back. I thought it should, sorry about that. But otherwise you have to use that delete on click. I think that's the most efficient way to do it.
Okay, so we've got another question from Ro, says that they used the new version for the first time recently with year 7 and found the tools far more difficult and less intuitive to use. What was the reason behind changing it?
Well, we felt that it did make things more intuitive, and we wanted to kind of reorganize the order of things. We felt we wanted to make the flow of tools kind of better. I think before we had delete and then modify and then the tools. So we wanted to make them a lot more in your face. So it would be, I'm really sorry to hear that, Rowan. It would be good to hear a bit more about what the sort of issues were that they had. I don't think we've changed particularly how the tools work, but more the organisation of them.
Thank you, Viv. We have another question regarding historical maps. Nicholas says that there doesn't seem to be any historical maps available for anywhere outside the UK. Is this correct, or I'm missing them somewhere? And then, is there any plans to expand this?
No, we don't have any historical maps for outside the UK, and no, there's been nothing mooted about doing that at the moment. I think it's always finding a sort of quality source of mapping that's the issue, and I don't know where we would find, you know, a source that was suitable right across, that was suitable globally. If you know of anything that you would like to see in the service, we are really open to suggestions on that. I think we always want to try and make things kind of as seamless as possible because it's for school pupils. So that's why we chose those historical maps that are there. We don't want pupils to be in one location and then the historical maps at another location are from a different era or at a different scale. You know, we tried to just make it one seamless coverage.
Okay. We have a question from Alan. If we can see the CSV that you showed us earlier to see exactly what data is in it?
Of course, yeah, no problem. Okay, so if I sort that by type, so I've got 3 Excel files there. So there's the litter pick one. So that's it, Alan. It's just a very simple file with one column for label and one column for the grid reference. So that is the one on the litter pick. And then the one on the London landmarks was postcodes, I believe. Yeah. So that's all that is, a list of postcodes and a list of labels. So that's all that's required. It does have to be a CSV file. So do be aware, I guess, if you open Excel and start to create a file, by default, it will probably save it as an XLSX format. But if you click Save As and click on the drop down, you'll get the CSV option there. But there are full details in the help pages of how to create those files. You can create one with long as well, of course, because we've got the global maps.
I've got a few more questions. Viv, not sure how we are we're in schedule. It says here, Francis, could you show us again how you color a building for land use, for example?
How you what, sorry?
How you color a building.
Color it in?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so let me just delete all of these maps. Okay, so here I am at the police station. So I would do that by, I'm in the drawing tools, which I select from the sidebar, select shape, and then you've got different options here. So I would generally always use the draw polygon one, which is the first option. So you choose a color. Let's say I want green. I want a green line and a green fill. And now I just start to trace my building. So I click once at the first corner and then along to the next, up to the next, and so on. And I'll just do it roughly, but you keep going. And once you're done, double click and that's it. So that is how you would do that. Sometimes I find, like I use the freehand one to do the Milton Keynes outline. Sometimes I think that can potentially be easier, you know, if it's a sort of urban area that's not lots of straight lines, because it allows you to do it a bit more quickly. Otherwise, if, you know, you could be clicking around lots and lots of corners. One tool that I didn't show you was that you can actually, in the drawing tools, there's a measurement label tool. So if you add a polygon or a shape, you can click on the measurement label and add a label to it. I think I did show you that on the Daily Mile map, actually, didn't I? But yeah, you can also measure lines and then, sorry, draw a line and then add a measurement label to it. I hope that covers that for Francis.
Thank you so much. Rachel's asking, hi, can you change the color of each building? For example, if you carry out a land use surveying along a street?
Yes, so whenever you add a shape, you choose the line and fill settings. But let's say you want to change it later. So if I close the shape menu, and by default, remember this select tool is active, and that allows me to move stuff around. So by default, the yellow arrow is on and I can move everything around. If I do want to then select it to make a change to it, I have to click on it on the map. So now my police station is outlined in yellow, that means it's selected. If I decide actually I want that to be blue, then I can make the changes and it changes that to blue. And I just click away from it on the map to deselect it. Similarly, if I want that polygon to be red, so I've clicked on it, it's outlined in yellow, then I can just change that to red. I hope that's what you meant. So you can either do it up front before you draw, select your color, your fill and line color here, or afterwards you have to select it and then change it. Is there anything else on that one, Laura?
Yes, so we have a few more questions regarding, is there any way for pupils to add their name, date, and learning objective before printing their map?
The only way to do that would really be by using the text box. So there's text, there's two options. Okay, so there's a text option, so that's for more of a label. So that's where I would say, okay, clear. And then, but we have a text box which gives you a paragraph of text. So then she could say, I hope to improve my grid reference skills or something like that. Okay, now when I go to print that, actually you can add your name. And there's my layout preview. So let's make sure that that's in there. So you can add your name and I won't add a legend, but let's generate this print. Sorry, my Zoom thing is covering the area where I say press print. How can I generate this? Oh, I can't get rid of my Zoom bar. Okay, I'll have to try and find you a print and show you later. But essentially, Claire's name, because she's entered it up here, when you print it, it will be at the bottom underneath the map. But it's not particularly big. In fact, maybe the map title would be the place for her to do it. That's what I would do. I would put her name in the map title, so that'll come up at the top of the map print, but her name would be at the bottom right in smaller font. But in terms of adding in our learning objectives, I think probably some sort of combination of the text options would be the way to do that. That's a nice idea. I wonder if we could think about that for the print tool. I'll moot that to our developers.
There's also a question, we are having difficulties printing maps at a whole word zoom level. Is this possible?
I know we did have some issues with printing, and apologize, I don't remember all the technical details now, but last year I did, in our resources section, make maps available, whole world maps available for people to download. So let me find those. I think they're in here. Oh no, I'm sorry. Of course, they'll be in the maps and symbols section. So I did put a whole load of world and continent maps in here in order that people could do that. So there's the Atlas map is available at A3 for you to print and download from here. But yeah, we did, apologies, we have had some issues with printing the whole world. And I don't remember all the technical details, but I can refer to the technical guys and come back on that. But if it's okay if that's okay as a workaround for you guys for now, certainly in the resources, I have put a sort of suite of maps. In fact, let's go back to those because there's some really nice ones, which one of our GIS guys, I don't know why I can't come out of this. Oh, there's some nice ones here with continents as well. So there's a continent one, which can be really nice to print out and, you know, for people to start annotating, you know, putting stickies on it and so on.
Okay. So I think we are running a little bit behind schedule. So what we can do is like, we will save your questions, the rest of the questions, and we will get back to you with the answers as soon as we can.
Yeah, because it's really time's marching on, isn't it? And we haven't showed you the global maps, so let's quickly do that. Okay, so we've looked at our maps of Great Britain, so let's zoom right out as far as we can go. So I always do that by using this little 4-arrow box here that says zoom to max extent. So that takes me as far as I can go. And be aware you can also, let's make my browser window as big as I can. Be aware you can also use the text collapse sidebar here to move the sidebar to the left, so that gives you kind of more map in the window. So at this scale, at this kind of worldwide scale, if you click on the map selector, there are two options. There's the Atlas, which we're looking at now. So you might, that's called the Collins-Bartholomew Atlas, kind of better known as the Times Atlas of the World. So, you know, an up-to-date world map that gives you all the political boundaries and so on. But we also have this world boundaries map. So again, if I click the radio button next to that, and that gives me a much more simple map where I can see all of the country names. So those are the options at that kind of scale. If you zoom in on a country to an urban level, I'm going to zoom in on Paris. So initially I'm looking at the Atlas style map, but as I zoom in, there are no options. We're just showing one mapping product, which is called Openstreetmap. So this is a crowdsource mapping project, and it's really, you know, there's high quality and lots of data in there. So I'm just zooming in on the centre of Paris to show you the kind of detail that's available. So if we zoom in on Notre Dame, you can see, you know, there's really large scale mapping available there. And if I show you the little grid reference tool, you can see it gives you the lat long for Notre Dame there. So yeah, so the OpenStreetMap is got global coverage, but you will find, because it's crowdsourced, you'll find that there is more data in heavily populated areas. So that's just a kind of word to the wise. If you want to explore somewhere like Greenland, you know, if you zoom in on a very remote area, you may find there is no open street mapping available there. So if you're looking in detail at any global location, you know, just I would advise to kind of research it first and check out the maps first before you ask pupils to look at them, to avoid any confusion there. So let's zoom back out. I was just thinking earlier, actually, you know, if you've got pupils who are studying a bit of Spanish or French or something, the global maps can be a nice add-on to that as well. So maybe it's quite good if you can tell the your language teachers about it too. It does have a lot of applications. So let's look at the overlays now. I said we'd look at the overlays. So we looked at the GB ones earlier, but we've split our overlays. We've added in a lot of new ones and we've split them into these different groups. So let's look at the reference grid first. So you can turn on the major lines of latitude, or there is a latitude, a lat long grid that you can turn on. The major lines of latitude is a nice one. You know, I think Darren had the example of, well, why not get them just to count things like how many countries lie along the equator. I like to use it with some of the overlays in the World Physical Geography section. We've got world biomes, which we put in last year. So pupils can start to work their way, perhaps, you know, north to south to look at the different zones and biomes that there are. So if you want to know, okay, what is that green biome region around the equator? We have at the top here a little information tool. So you activate it and then click on the biome and it tells me that this is tropical forest. So you can do that, for example, up here and see that this one is deserts. So the biomes are really, really good fun, I think, for pupils that are working on those. Another nice overlay that we've got, let's turn that one off, are the world time zones. So I think there's lots of potential with the time zones, you know, to do kind of little quizzes and things and think about, for example, let's look at Russia, you know, how many time zones are there in Russia? I have got a map which I made. I used something called, I think it was called Flight Radar, which, you know, shows you all the flights in the air right now. And I was able to, you know, see that this flight BA209 was in the air, and how long it takes and how many time zones it goes through. We have some really nice locational knowledge resources which were written by a couple of experts in that field. And one of their time zone ideas was to, you know, focus on a global location and get kids to write a little postcard, you know, okay, I'm in Cairo, the time here is X, it's, you know, 5 hours ahead of the time at home and so on. So we'll send you a link to those locational resources as well. And the other, let's clear the map. And I also wanted to show you in physical geography, combining the volcanoes. So this is one of the recent additions. So there's the database of volcanoes you can visualize, and there's a little guide to the different types there. But I think it's really great to turn on the plate boundaries with that as well, because then they can start to say, all right, okay, so where do boundaries occur along these fault lines? And there's a really nice little guide to the different plate types as well. So that's good fun. And you can also use the feature information tool on any individual volcano. So if we go over here and go to the Canary Islands, you know, they could explore the La Palma one. What kind of volcano is the La Palma one that's been erupting? And, you know, one of the locational knowledge resources kind of advocates creating story maps around these kind of stories in the media. So can they find some images and add the images? Can they use the text box to tell us what happened on different days when the volcano's been erupting and so on? The last overlays that I want to show you are the population density one. I think we all really love this one in our team. Oh, I've still got the boundaries on. Let's turn those off. So yeah, so we think the population density one is great. You know, if you look at somewhere like the Nile Delta, you know, you can start to talk about the physical geography as well, you know, and, you know, why resources are essential to settlement. And it's also really clear when you zoom over to the Himalayas, you know, mountain ranges, what kind of impact does physical geography have on the settlement and migration? You can even see that at home, actually. If I go to Scotland, we do have a mountain ranges one as well. So you can adjust the transparency of things with these little sliders under each overlay. But you can see, for example, okay, well, there's not many people living in the Grampian Mountains, are there? So there can be closer to home examples there too. And you can really see clearly the density of population in different locations. And the last one I was going to show you were these climate ones, which are really kind of apt given that the COP conference has just finished. I'll zoom out to a global level to have a look at these. So there are various ones. There's ones on temperature and precipitation. So we think these have got real potential for kind of prompting discussion. So, you know, just as a quick comparison, there's an average temperature between 2010 to 2018. And you can see the hotter areas around Western Africa there. And then we've got projections here. So if we turn on the maximum projection between now and 2040, you can see there's a lot more hotter areas. So really useful for prompting discussion on climate change and what steps we can take. So that is all I had to show you guys. I think that's 5 o'clock, so I'm really sorry we've run over time a little bit. I'm happy to stay on for another 5 minutes for more questions, but I think then we should call it a day, and Laura and I will work tomorrow to get responses to any questions that we haven't answered. But thank you very much for coming along, and I hope it's been useful. And please just do follow up. If you think of anything later, do let us know, and we'll be sure to send links to all the resources I've mentioned as well. Laura, if there's anything that you think is important to answer now, just let me know.
Yeah, sure. I'll be having a quick look. As I said, like, thank you so much for leaving your questions in the chat. If there's any questions that haven't been covered in this webinar, we will be sending the complete Q&A questions from the chat. With regards to the recordings, we will be uploading the recording to our YouTube channel a few days after the event. So yeah, we will send you an email with that. Okay, so I've got a few questions here. With regards the 4-grid reference, 6-grid reference.
Yeah.
So Robin is asking, how would you get the children to get the grid references that are more zoom in / more specific? For example, if the children are out collecting data and they mark on a physical map where they find rubbish, for example, how do you put this in Digimaps when the grid references are much bigger?
Yeah, that's a tricky one, I guess. I mean, I sort of scraped those grid references using Digimap for Schools. So I don't know, let's say they were collecting rubbish along the Thames here or something. I think really you'd have to start to think about using an app to collect your field trip data for doing that kind of thing. We have I think the Ordnance Survey have got a field trip app that we could recommend for you. But really that example, I just kind of, you know, said, okay, this is where so-and-so found the rubbish. And I used this coordinate capture tool to find that. So that was how I did it. But yeah, if you were out in the field and you wanted to know exactly where someone found their water bottle, I think you'd have to think about an app. Otherwise, you know, you would just know it's in that particular geographic location, but you wouldn't be able to pinpoint the grid reference.
And also, I can put in the chat the how-to guide and how to upload your data into Digimap for School. So I will be putting it in the chat, or it will be in the Q&A. So I can get back to you after this event, Robin. A question from Andrea, or feedback. Can you simplify the tools available for younger children / SEN that need less BC / no tools they won't require?
So like a sort of pared down version where you could just perhaps view the maps? Is that the sort of thing?
And Lucy is also interested in knowing if the tools can be simplified for KS1 / LKS2 students.
It's not something that we've considered or really had feedback on before, but it would be really good to get more of an understanding from you of what you think would work. Yeah, it could be possible to have a more pared back version, but yeah, we'd need to do some research with you guys and other people to see what's required. So maybe we could get in touch with you after the session to see what you're thinking.
Another quick question is, can you search for specific geographical features like volcanoes?
No. Well, let's see if what we did last year was we realized that the search options, that the search database that we use sometimes didn't return a very accurate result for global landmarks. So what we did was we put together our own list. So when you search, so I've searched for Vesuvius and it comes up with these two places, but there's another tab. So do look out for that there's this global landmarks tab where we've added some really popular places because we want pupils to, you know, be able to find the Grand Canyon and things like that easily. But yes, that's something that I did forget to mention. I'm really sorry that you may well find things in the global landmarks thing. But if it's just a kind of a type of feature, no, we don't offer that sort of facility. You wouldn't be able to search for waterfalls or volcanoes.
Cool. And I think I've got the last question here from John. Are there any plans to include global aerial images as opposed to just UK?
Not that I'm aware of, no. But I agree that would be an excellent addition. Yeah, I can bring that up with the team, but I'm not sure of the ease and expense of doing that. But yeah, that would be amazing to have that. I agree.
Yeah, if you got any questions or feedback about like future features that perhaps we can put, please feel free to contact us via email, which is digimap.schools@ed.ac.uk. You can also follow us on social media. We've got a fantastic teaching community on Twitter, where you can find real examples on how to use Digimap for schools in and beyond the classroom, like ancient civilizations, fieldwork. So you can follow us on Twitter. Here, as you can see on the screen, we also have a YouTube channel with our how-to guides and other learning resources, and also the recordings of previous events. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram as well.
As Laura said, there's often some really great ideas on the Twitter channel. There's lots of really engaged teachers who send us pictures of what they've been up to. Some really fun stuff on there. So do follow us. And if anyone wants to present what they've been up to with the service, that would be amazing as well. Last week, Laura organised a Teach Meet where we had 2 teachers come along and tell us how they use the service and give their advice. So if you're interested in doing that, we'd really love to hear from you. Okay, I think that's everything from us. So I think we should close the session now and thank everyone.